Welcome to the Emotional Balance Sheet, the go-to podcast for parents with multiple kids, especially those with twins, triplets, or more, who are navigating the maze of modern family life and personal finance. Whether you're overwhelmed by education or retirement planning, parenting dilemmas, career transitions, or trying to define your purpose and plan, we're here to guide you with empathy, encouragement, and expertise. Hosted by Paul Fenner, founder of Tama Capital, a certified financial planner and parent to 4 kids, including a set of triplets. Our podcast is your ally in the quest for financial peace of mind, proving that money matters, but family comes first. Subscribe now and join our community of empowered parents at tamacapital.com. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment decisions. Clients of Tama may retain positions in the securities discussed in this podcast.
What does comprehensive financial planning even mean? At Tama Capital, it means a family office where lifestyle planning such as retirement, college, portfolio management, and tax prep and planning are all under one umbrella. But it goes beyond numbers. We focus as much on the emotional side of financial planning as we do on the financial side. We get you. We understand your challenges of building a family, business or career, and a healthy life. We are devoted to wealth planning for families like yours because we are you. Learn how our family can help your family by visiting tamacapital.com. Have you ever wondered what really happens when you decide to work with a financial advisor for the first time? Especially when life already feels like a 3-ring circus? I sat down with Marisa Lonic, author, coach, and founder of Mama Work It, to talk about the emotional side of money, career pivots, and raising 4 kids, including a set of twins. All boys, by the way. We dive into what it's like navigating big life changes like moving states, the vulnerability that comes from opening up about your finances, and why timing and trust matter so much when you're leaning on experts for help. Marisa also shares a powerful story about motherhood and this surprising tattoo that I didn't know that she had that led to some unexpected growth in her life. Please enjoy my conversation with Marisa Lonic. All right, Marisa Lonic, you're a little nervous to be back here for your second time, I can tell.
Nervous? I don't know.
Well, it's interesting because you just asked before I hit record, like, I have no idea what you're going to ask. Let's just go. Yeah. And I've never had anybody say that to me before.
It's like, yeah, we're recording this in May. It's what I have been lovingly referring to as Maycember, which is like a crazy time of year to be a parent. And I'm just kind of feeling a little bit like I'm flying by the seat of my pants a little bit.
You know, you're the second person that has referred to May that way. One of my economist friends on his podcast said the same thing. He's got, I think Ryan's got a set of, Ryan Dietrich is his name. I don't know if he has a set of twins. Maybe he doesn't, but he has 3 kids. And as you and I have talked about, and I've talked about on the show often, it's like when you have 3 or more kids and you have 4, including a set of twins, you're just in another hemisphere, I think. I don't know what it is about that 3rd child, but it does something to family dynamics, good, bad, or indifferent.
Yeah.
So
no, it's just, yeah.
So the reason, so just to refresh our audience, this is really interesting. I was trying to actually dig through my notes how I even found you, like how we even met, but you were a podcast guest like several years ago. And then you ended up calling me, and I think I'm still one of the only male guests that you've had on your Mama Work It podcast. Yes. Which we'll link to. And you had me back on. I had you on. You had me on your show. And then I don't know how long it was after that, I get this email or this call from you. You're like, hey, would you be interested in meeting? And I'm like, sure. I didn't know what about. Little did I know that you and your husband, Anthony, wanted to meet to talk about potentially working together.
Yes.
And so I'm getting listeners, I'm getting to the reason why Marissa's back on. I've had families that I've worked with on the show before, and some we've gone like, they want to go like real deep into like their actual financial situation. Like one family, the Dillons, had a lot of debt, both went to grad school, PA school, and so that conversation was a lot about the details of how they unburied themselves, which is amazing story. But I often get this question about, well, what's it like working with a financial advisor? What's it like working with you, Paul? Like what? And it's still like sometimes hard to explain. And sometimes I wish that I had somebody that I have a list of people that I give as references, but I always wish I had some kind of like video or audio that did a really good job of explaining like what the process was like, what was good, what was bad. And so that's the conversation I wanted to have with you today, and talk about some of the life transitions that you've been through. Because obviously, if we didn't talk about life transitions, I don't know if this podcast would even exist anymore, because we just seem to go round and round.
Yeah.
So that's the premise of today's conversation. So now I'm kind of curious, like, where do we start with this, Marissa?
So many places.
Where would you like to start?
Well, you gave a great kind of background on just how we got to know each other just via business, podcast guesting, and yeah, I think that I'll just give you a little bit more background. I think that just Anthony, who's my husband, and I, we'd never worked with a financial advisor before. We had thought about it for a while, and just, it's one of those things like on your, kind of like you shelf it, and then you never really like prioritize it. And so we finally did say like, okay, this is the year we really want to invest in that service, contact someone. It's neither one of us is in the financial industry. So we wanted to be able to outsource to someone else's zone of genius rather than try and reinvent the wheel on our own. Of course, I think there's definitely research and things you can do on your own account. And we do try to be as informed and diligent as we can. We listen to podcasts and we, read books and things like that. But, there's nothing like tapping into someone whose whole livelihood, whole career, whole education potentially is centered around financial advisory. And so we made that decision that we wanted to utilize that resource. I remembered that you were in my mental Rolodex. And so we reached out.
So I have this phrase I use often. No one wakes up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat thinking, oh my God, I have to have a financial plan, or even like work with an advisor. So to listen to you describe that, I hear that often about how people I guess the right word is pushed it off, but you're living your life. Like you guys have 4 boys, including your set of twins who are 11, right? 11 yes. Now. And there's no shortage of personal and financial priorities pulling at us. And I don't think it really matters if you have 4 kids like we do, or if you have 1 kid. There's always something, and it's always easy to put this on the back burner. And usually people finally make that decision to reach out to an advisor or myself when there's a life event. And I think your life event is when you guys relocated from California to Texas.
Yes. Yes.
And so that's usually the trigger. I never know why someone shows up at my doorstep, but during that first call, I understand the why behind it finally. Like it's kind of like, and I don't know if it's like this with your coaching business, where you never necessarily know when somebody's going to show up, but when they finally do, you can quickly understand, okay, now I understand like why they're here.
Yeah. And I think similar to coaching, people reach out when they're ready. Mm-hmm. People, it's an easy yes when they're ready. And if they're not ready, I don't care how good of a salesperson you are. And I don't consider myself like an incredible salesperson, but I don't care how good of a salesperson you are. When someone's not ready to make that commitment to themselves, whether that be in coaching or whether that be in working with an advisor and really digging into the financial plans and stuff, because that can be quite emotional. It's like they really just have to be in that state of mind and ready to go.
I think that's one really strong similarity between like what you do and what I do. And you just said the word, there's such an emotional connection, because just like you're doing with your coaching clients and I do with you all as Tama families, we're going really deep into somebody's lives.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the things that can sometimes catch people off guard, at least with my version of running my family office, that I call it, in financial planning. And I try to let people know in that first alignment meeting, hey, this is more than just numbers on a piece of paper. Like, we're going to go in depth, and I'm going to ask you questions that you're like scratching your head, like, why in the heck would Paul ever ask me that question? But as you get to know me and to know the process, I hope that kind of light bulb goes off, like, yeah, now I understand why he's asking me all these personal questions.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. There's definitely, planning and strategy. It requires tons of just details and, understanding core values and root cause and all of these things. And then on top of it, I used to work in the au pair industry. I don't know if you know that about me. I did that for 11 years. Yeah.
I knew I was going to learn many new things about you today. So this is number one.
When I worked in the corporate world, I was in the au pair industry. And, the two things I always say that are like the most sensitive areas to talk about with people are their money and their kids. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what you do as well.
Yes.
And so, it takes a lot of vulnerability. It takes a lot of honesty, trust. It's just, think about it. They're like two things that are most critical, most important to a lot of people, their family and their finances.
So when you and as we were starting the process, the journey of deciding to work together, for those that probably wouldn't know this about me or the workings of the firm, is that there's typically at least two initial meetings. One, as I call, alignment meeting. We're just kind of getting to know each other. If we both agree that it's a good fit, then we move into what I would call a discovery meeting. And at that meeting, we dive into the inner workings of your financial life, if you will. That first meeting, I think I may have caught you guys off guard. Was like, I don't want any financial numbers. This is just a conversation. Mm-hmm. And if we get through that and we think that we want to have this second date, sometimes as I refer to it, then that's when we get into the details and you bring financial statements and tax returns, and there's a list of things that I ask you to do. And when you bring all that together, we kind of start framing out and building this house, if you will, this framework of a plan in that discovery meeting. Because what I like to do is give you a good sense of what it's like working with me, and likewise, I want to know what it's like working with you all as families. What about that process do you think was beneficial, interesting, or unexpected? Like I had no idea that it was going to end up turning out this way.
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I have nothing to compare it to because we had never worked with an advisor before. So I don't know if that's a typical process, but it definitely felt like there was a lot of effort, energy, time spent early on in really just, like you said, assessing if this was the right fit, assessing if the goals that the, clients like that we had in mind were something that you could help us achieve, that were even feasible, things like that. So I think there's a lot of front loading that goes into it before a contract is even signed. And I can appreciate that 100% when, again, just to give a similar example, like when you are a coach, one of my mentors told me when I was getting certified, you need to, and she used the words, fall in love with your clients. And she didn't mean it in that way, but she meant it like you really have to have an invested interest in them.
Yeah.
Because if it's not a fit, it's just, you're not going to be able to help them at the level that, their expectation is. And I always tell my clients, your success is my success. So it's like, if you're not winning, if you're not feeling like you're hitting your goals, I feel responsible that I'm not helping you get there. And so I can appreciate that kind of like intensity early on, and like that level of understanding and like just real kind of prerequisite work that goes into it. I will tell you, having never worked with a financial advisor, if this is you, and again, Paul, you mentioned this, like first meeting, you're not looking at facts and figures. It's really more of a conversation, but like, better be ready to like hand over the keys to everything, because it's terrifying in a way. Like there has to be such trust there, because it's terrifying to be like, oh, sure, here's all this information, all this like, stuff that nobody talks about really with other people, but not even that, just like even like access and things. And that can be really daunting and terrifying. And I think you probably saw that on my face at one point, and we're like, whoa, okay, she's freaking out a little bit. Maybe we should talk her off the ledge. I don't know.
Yeah, no, and you and Anthony are not the first people I've worked with that I've seen that on their face. And that's what I try to do, is try to take the temperature of the room down as much as possible, so that it's not as overwhelming. So actually, that's why I was going to ask you, because you use the word intensity. Did you, obviously it can be very intense because you're sharing all this private information, but did it feel overwhelming as well? Or is that, am I using intensity and overwhelming simultaneously?
No, it did not feel overwhelming. I think that we didn't make this decision on a whim. And so for us, we were like, we're ready yesterday. Like, let's go, let's do it. Maybe it could feel overwhelming to someone if they were still on the fence and weren't ready to, like, it wasn't a hell yes for them to want to step into that. But no, that was not a vibe I was getting.
Because that's the one thing that I try to make sure that doesn't happen, or I try to limit that as much as possible, is this feeling of overwhelmed or overwhelmingness, because it can be a lot to throw at somebody.
No, I mean, if you've ever done your taxes every year, that process can feel overwhelming. Like, this is not any harder than that, Yeah. And I don't even do my own taxes. Like, I outsource it, but still gathering all the information and answering the questionnaires and all the things, like just being in that frame of mind, I think, is what it is.
That I know. And obviously, because you guys have never worked with anyone before, but that's a question I've gotten before, where how unique is it to have somebody like me in this family office that I've tried to develop, where planning, portfolio management, and tax preparation and planning is all under one umbrella, to where like you don't have to pick up the phone to call 2, 3, 4 people. You're just picking up the phone and calling me and saying, hey, I've got this question about taxes, or I've got this question about my portfolio, or hey, we've decided that we're going to do something different this year, and so it's going to impact our plan. Did that resonate with you guys at all? Or what were your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think it was nice to have a one-stop shop, for sure. Something else we'd been sort of like talking about and never really like had made happen was just like all of our estate planning and all of our, so it was nice to just be able to have an expert walk us through the process. Kind of like, I mean, it's still a heavy load to have to provide documentation and, answer hard questions and things like that, especially in the estate planning process. But, it's nice to have like a trusted advisor to be able to sort of guide the way.
I personally think, and I think I stressed this to you, and I hope I did, because I stress it to everyone, is that the estate planning is the most emotional part of all this. Because especially if you have kids, because you get to the questions where it's like, okay, what happens to my kids if either I'm no longer here, or my wife Teresa, or your husband Anthony's no longer here? Like, what do we do? Like, who tells our story? Who takes care of our kids? And that to me is intense and can be overwhelming, especially because most people don't want to think about that. But from my vantage point of what I do and going through situations where people didn't have an estate plan, to me, that's more terrifying. And
oh yeah,
that's one of the reasons why I work so hard to make sure that there is that fit in the beginning, because I know sooner or later that conversation is coming down the road, and I want to make sure that the family that I'm working with, such as you guys, are that comfortable with me knowing that you're going to share like even more, in-depth information about yourselves.
Yeah. I think I was kind of like mentally prepped for that, because years ago I had a conversation with my cousin who had gone through the process, and she was like, oh my God, it's so stressful. And they're asking me a bunch of questions about this and that, and what happens in this scenario and that scenario. And so I knew what to expect, what was
That's
coming.
Good. I didn't know that.
with those questions, but it doesn't make them any easier to think through and try on for your own family. I mean, It's intense. That part is a bit intense, I think.
And the one thing that I'll just say on the estate plan, and then we'll move on, is that it's the way I describe it is like your ability to tell your story while you're still here, so that nobody else is telling it for you, like when you're gone. And the other thing about estate planning is that it's never set in stone. And the people that you pick to be guardians or trustees today, may not be the same persons that you feel comfortable with 5-10 years from now. So
sure.
I think that's the other thing I would highlight for the audience, is that, going through the estate planning process is, and just like any of the other plans we develop, whether it's college or retirement, nothing's ever set in stone. Everything is very fluid and flexible, I think, in the world of financial planning when it comes to the work that we do. So if you could kind of describe, I think, so you and Anthony make the decision, yep, Paul's our guy, we're completely, on board and want to work. What did you think about the onboarding situation? Was that overwhelming at all, or stepping through that process, which hopefully is still, I don't know, fairly fresh in your guys' mind, since I think it was back in February when we actually went through things. But what was that like? Because again, that's something I'm very cognizant of not overwhelming people with, like, trying to take things bite by bite and at their own speed, rather than trying to push or force the process.
Well, I'm not trying to.
Oh, and you can say anything you want, bad or good. I'm not trying to toot
my own horn, but I think when you have 4 kids, it takes a lot to overwhelm you. And
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
And so I know you work a lot with families of multiples, and so I can appreciate that sensitivity, but I think we can handle a lot. And so, no, the process did not feel overwhelming. I mean, it was very organized. I love a good list. So
you do. You like bullet points, and I like
it. I love a good to-do list. Just let me boom, 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 get it done. There was like pretty consistent communication. I did not feel overwhelmed. No, I think, sometimes the tasks can feel like, just, maybe a bit like tedious tasks to do, like compile this or that, or, if you're not super organized, you have to maybe search for something that isn't at your fingertips. But I don't know. I mean, I try my best to keep my stuff together. I think I've been complimented that I'm pretty damn organized by you. So.
You are. You made the onboarding process with you and Anthony incredibly efficient. Like you were ready to go. And I think that was one of the I feel like absolute joys of like working with the two of you, is that you were always on top of it. And I never felt like we were behind or like I had to push. Cause some people I do have to push, like, okay, let's not take like, 4 months to get onboarded. And like you made the decision. Yeah. Let's get to the good stuff of where you guys want to be and figuring out like solutions and options, because that's really what I think it comes down to on the planning perspective is like, and I think that's one of the reasons why people don't work with advisors are because they're afraid of what they're going to find out. And oftentimes that fear is not justified, but until you know, you don't know. And so totally. I've been down that road with many families. Fortunately, you're one of the ones that, have a great future ahead of you. So, but there's other families that they think that they're so far behind that they're afraid to take that first step forward. And I'd say 8-9 times out of 10, that's just not the case.
Right. There's a fear barrier there for sure.
Do you find that like when you're working with your coaching clients that type of fear gets in the way from being able to help them get to where they want to ultimately go?
Yeah, all the time. I mean, it's the stories we tell ourselves, it's the beliefs we have deeply rooted, because those thoughts, those feelings, they affect our actions, which affect our results. So like the people who maybe know they need this deep down, but think to themselves like, I'm not in a position to do that, or I'm, whatever story they're telling themselves, or let me wait till next year until this pans out or that pans out, affects their actions, which means they're not taking those steps, right, toward getting a plan together, getting a strategy together. And then that potentially is affecting results of their not getting closer to the goals they have. And so you could totally place that into financial planning, personal planning, career planning, business development. I mean, it stops us in so many ways.
So looking back, before I want to pivot to focus on the work that you do, is when you look at the relationship so far and the process from alignment meeting to discovery to the onboarding process, what surprised you the most in a good way, hopefully a good way or a bad way, that you didn't necessarily expect, but looking back, you're like, wow, that I'm really glad that it ended up working out the way that it did.
I don't know if I have any like real surprises.
And that probably doesn't surprise me of how damn organized you are.
And how I'm not you probably noticed, like, I'm not a very like spontaneous, like person. I'm very well researched. I'm nerdy. And so like I'm risk averse. So like, I guess I don't like surprises. So I try to do my best to avoid them. I don't know.
Well, was there anything about the process that stuck out to you, or maybe, to Anthony? I mean, obviously he's not here, but in conversations with him, that made you guys like solidified your decision, I guess maybe that's the right angle to take.
Well, I think it was timing on one perspective, like you said, like a lot of times your clients will come with different seasons of life they're in and things like that. And our kids are getting older. And even though we did start the process of thinking about college savings early on, we didn't have like a real, I think we knew we needed guidance from more of an expert into really structuring that and fine tuning the details of that and all that. And so we were like, all right, we really need to like get moving on this. So timing, relationship, trust, I think all those things are really critical and important. When I meet people for the first time on like discovery calls and things, I am like a super hard sell. Like I just always have my guard up. I don't know if it's the native New Yorker in me. I don't know what it is, but I think it helped that like we hadn't worked together before, but I had interviewed you on the show, you had interviewed me, and we had gotten to know each other in a professional manner where there was no sales pitch or anything. And it was just kind of like getting to know you as a person. And so I think that was helpful.
Yeah, I found that to be very unique. And, I tell people often, I've had the firm now, it'll be 15 years in December when the triplets turn 15. And I love doing the podcast. It's more about having great conversations with people like you. It's not necessarily about the marketing aspect of things. And I've tried various marketing things over the years, and nothing ever comes close to having a referral from an existing family. And I'm sure it's probably like that with your coaching business as well, because no one is going to talk either highly of you or potentially badly of you, hopefully not, than the current families, or in your cases, clients that you work with. And to me, when I look back and look at the current families I work with, 77% of them either came to me from a referral or somebody that knew me personally. So I think you kind of fall in that bucket, if you will, because we got to know each other on a personal basis. And then, out of the blue, I get a call from you and like, hey, can we meet? I'm like, really? Like, this is great. So I don't know where I was going with that, but I've had this like really bad relationship with, I'll call it, marketing over the years, which is ironic because I don't know if you remember this or not, but my wife, Teresa, works in marketing. Like, her career is in marketing, and she absolutely has nothing to do with the firm, has stayed far away from it from a marketing standpoint. And that's probably helped keep our marriage together these last 15 years.
Yeah, no, I mean, I get that. I've read, the title is escaping me right now. It's a book about storytelling in marketing.
Oh, Donald Miller?
No.
Is that the author?
No, I'll send it to you. Of course, I'll remember it after we stop recording, and I'll send it to you so you can share it with your listeners in the show notes. But it's such a great read. And one of the most powerful takeaways from that was like, you can tell your story and it'll be impactful, but it won't be half as impactful as if someone else tells your story. And so that's kind of what you're referring to, is like, if the client talks about their experience with you, you could talk about all you do till you're blue in the face, but it won't have the same impact. It won't resonate. Yeah,
I would completely agree. So I want to pivot and put the focus back on you some more and have you walk us through. And I still think there's some misconceptions, just like there are about financial advisors, because as many good advisors are out there, and I know a bunch of them, we're fairly a tight-knit group community, but there's a lot of Bernie Madoffs out there too. Like, there's no one, there's always going to be people out there trying to separate you from your money from your assets. And I think there's some misconception, I think, around the idea of having a coach. And I always liken it back to like growing up and playing sports and dealing with sports with my kids right now. It's like, as professionals, we think that maybe we don't need a coach. And I would argue strongly like just the opposite. I think even as professionals, as old or as young as we are, we could always use a coach in our corner to help for whatever reason it may be. And so I just wanted to get your take on that and kind of have you elaborate on maybe some of the specifics of coaching that you do for the audience again.
Yeah. And I'm in total agreement. I mean, I've been working with coaches, and I think, by the way, the best coaches have coaches. So I've been working with coaches for over a decade, different seasons, different coaches, different goals I've had. And I don't know I'm a highly ambitious and motivated, self-motivated person, but I really don't think I would have been able to accomplish 50% of what I did at minimum without having that accountability, that guidance, that toolkit of working with a coach. And so it's still a little like interesting to people because it's not quite a necessity. Like, in the societal kind of way we look at it, it sort of feels like this thing only maybe like executives get coaching, or, you know, because you had to pay out of pocket. It's not something covered, you know, in other ways. And so it can feel kind of like this luxury item, but actually it's such a catalyst for really so many things that everyday people want to do, you know, career shifts, better work-life balance, stress reduction, starting businesses, scaling businesses. So it's just, I think, a really incredible investment you can make in yourself. And I think people tend to think it's this big investment that, you know, I might not be able to afford, or you know, it's just not something like I vibe with or whatever. But there are so many avenues you can go with this where you can get it to work for you, I think.
I think there's a key word that you use there multiple times, investment. And I think some people see it probably as a cost. Like sometimes I know people see the work that I do for them as a cost rather than an investment. But if you, I think it's a mindset shift where if you see that as an investment and it checks all those boxes that you're trying to work on that you just talked about, like life transitions, career transitions, trying to find harmony at home between, you know, work and kids and your relationship with your spouse or partner, and even your own taking time for yourself. Like, how do you do all that? And I think that having and working with, you know, a coach like yourself is immeasurable. I know I've worked with several over the years, and I completely agree with what you said before. I wouldn't be here where I'm at today without those people. I know that, and I know I only have you for a finite period of time. So I know that you're very active on social media. I'm only on LinkedIn now, in case no one realized that. I got off of Instagram and Facebook months and months ago, like I think last year. So obviously no one's missing me from those platforms, except for Teresa's like, you never know what's going on. I'm like, that's why I have you. But you, and I read the article last week, and it must have been through LinkedIn, that you wrote about vulnerability in this tattoo situation.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, we're going to get this on tape now.
Yeah. Okay.
Can you walk us through like what was going through? Maybe give us a synopsis of what happened, but walk us through like what were you thinking when you wrote that, and the message and the point that you were trying to get across about being vulnerable.
Yeah.
I knew I was going to get you with this one.
What were you thinking that day in December 20? Okay, so quick backstory. For those of you who don't know me, I started this entrepreneurial journey with the mom market in mind. So the name of my business is called Mama Work It. It's really to help support women and parents in general with the juggle of parenting, work life, spouse life, all the hats that we wear. I have since pivoted in business, and I do a lot of coaching just with a more diverse population. I'm a certified intuitive life and business coach. So I work with all different types of people, all different seasons of life. I do speaking engagements. I do lunch and learns, workshops, keynotes, all that great stuff. I love anything personal, professional development. But let's take it back to the mom space for a minute. So a few years ago, I got this intuitive nudge. I'm an author. I've written 3 books, and I got this nudge to do a collaborative book project. And I wanted to lean in this book project, this anthology, to be vulnerable stories from moms, because I think vulnerability and motherhood are 2 things that often you don't put together. Right. Moms are like these really strong, fierce leaders who are, you know, wearing all the hats, doing all the things, like no time for tears, like let's just go, get it done, check, check, check. And a lot of us have these like vulnerable moments where we feel really isolated. And so it's sort of this taboo topic. And I am like the number one person who needs to be checked into like the vulnerability help center because I struggle with it myself. And so I was like, well, what better way to really heal that or like work on that than to promote an anthology about it. And so I started the process, marketing, gathering all the stories. We had so many amazing contributions. During that time, we experienced like a big life shift. We changed states, as you mentioned. It was a big transition. The project needed to be sort of put on pause. When I was ready to pick it back up, I was feeling like it was such a forced endeavor. And so I did a lot of like soul searching and realizing that this project was no longer something I could really like move on and commit to. And that it just wasn't aligning with where I was at. And so we pivoted and we decided, okay, the book's not going to be published now, but if you'd still like your vulnerable story shared, because I think I want to use my community and my platform to do good and still, honor these stories, you're welcome to on the Mama Work It blog. And we have a blog series right now happening about, a bunch of these vulnerable stories. We didn't get the 30 plus that originally were going to be in the book, but we did get quite a few that wanted to be in the blog. And so that's what's happening right now. And I started with myself because that takes courage. And I had this idea and I wanted to, be the first to kind of jump off the cliff and do it. And so, yeah, I shared this story. So now I'll get to the vulnerable story. What I was thinking, oh my God, I don't know. I thought about this tattoo I wanted for a really long time. And I was pretty, I'm a really well, like thought out, non-impulsive person. Like it had been a while that I really wanted it. And then like leading up to getting it, like the night before, a day before, week before, day of, I had all these feelings to not do it. But what did I do? I'm a really disciplined person. I still did it. I still went through with it, even though like in my core of cores, I knew like this was like not the thing to do. And so I had like probably a panic attack after I got it. I don't know. I was like I did not feel good in my body. And then days later, I don't know if you read the article, but days later, I realized when I was looking at it, it wasn't right. Even the right design that I had. When I read that part,
I was like, oh my God.
I mean, like, and the irony of all of this is that the tattoo was supposed to mean surrender. So I'm like, I'm surrendering to the fact that like I didn't even listen to my intuition. I made this like big snafu. I'm not happy with this design. It's not even the right one. And so 6 weeks post tattoo, I started the removal process. But I think the worst part, and it's still kind of fading years later, but I think the biggest lesson for me in all of this wasn't just like getting a tattoo and not liking it. I mean, I got a tattoo at 21 and I don't like it either, but I don't see it every day and it doesn't bother me quite as much. I was 38 when I got this one, but I think it was the motherhood piece because I feel like as a mom, I felt so responsible to make good decisions and right decisions and set the right example. And I felt like I hadn't in this situation. And so telling my kids about this tattoo, because I hid it for months and months and months, but then I couldn't hide it anymore. Telling my kids about it was the most vulnerable part of the whole process for me.
Yeah, that was like one of the most there were so many interesting pieces about, I did read it. I read it all. And there were so many interesting pieces about it. And that was one of them. So I'm glad that you brought that because in telling your kids and then Anthony didn't know either.
It was such a weird place for me.
Yeah. It's like the Marisa that when I was reading it, I'm like, I don't even know, like, this isn't the Marisa I know.
Who are you? Yeah.
But I wanted you to share that because I thought it was so well written, and I think it ties to, I think the vulnerability that you were trying to cross, and some of the issues that we face as parents, whether you're man or mom or dad. I think we all go through places like that. And, for you to be able to share yours, I think was phenomenal. So thank you for writing
Thank you.
that.
Yes, I'm very fortunate. I have such understanding guys around me. I live with 5 guys. 4 boys,
I don't think I mentioned that. Your 4 kids are all boys.
Yes. And even Anthony was just so empathetic about the whole situation. And I don't know. It's just, I'm very fortunate in that way. But that was and I remember thinking when I was in tears looking at this tattoo being one day I'll write about you, but not yet.
Now that one day is here.
Yeah.
Well, Marisa, I can't thank you enough for being back on the show. This was a blast to do. Where's the best way for people to follow you, to learn more about the coaching work that you do?
Yeah, I would say if you're a parent and you're really leaning into support in that space, mamaworkit.com, MAMA. If you are more looking for coaching, speaking, guided meditation work, whether that be within the organization you work for or for yourself, marisalonic.com.
Okay. And we'll have show notes or links to those in the show notes. And then obviously you're on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, all of those.
I am in all the places, but I use a scheduling app. So I'm, I cheat a little bit with my posting because I got to be efficient with my time,
That's right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Marisa, again, I can't thank you enough for spending the time with us today. And I know I learned at least a couple new things about you today, which was awesome. So I'm sure our listeners learned a lot more. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
To me, that was a fun conversation and one that I've been wanting to have for a long time. Because as I mentioned, people often ask me what it's like working with me or what it's like working with a financial advisor. And as Marisa put it, you will know more when somebody explains something to you going through that process and working with myself as an advisor or anybody else for that matter, more so than me just telling you, these are all the things that I can do for you or can help you and your family with. Financial planning, at least how I handle it, is deeply personal and emotional. It's not just about spreadsheets. We go much deeper and talk about values, fears, and what you really want as a family for your future and for your spouse, your partner, for yourself, for your kids. And this level of financial planning requires deep trust and vulnerability. And that's a key word that Marisa mentioned multiple times and actually finished our conversation talking about her story of being vulnerable and that tattoo that she got, which I did not know about. Very interesting. But you could hopefully came across from her angle, the process that her and her husband, Anthony, went through in making a decision not only to work with me, but what that process was like from a initial meeting to a second meeting to a third meeting to an onboarding process. Because what I found in working as an advisor for 2 decades now is that usually life transitions are that powerful catalyst for action. Because not everybody, let me phrase it a different way. As I mentioned, nobody wakes up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat thinking, oh my gosh, I've got to have a financial plan. It usually happens when there's a life event, a job change, moving, kids going to college, planning for college, kids going to high school, kids going to middle school. I think there's no shortage of life transitions that we go through, whether we realize them or not. And so that's what I wanted to get across in this episode, for you to hear somebody's own experience of working with a financial advisor. And hopefully, if you're still on the fence, maybe it motivates you to reach out to myself or just somebody that you've been meaning to talk to about your financial plans. Now that you've made it to the end of another great conversation, are you looking for more? If so, head over to tamacapital.com, where you will find all of our conversations. Use the search feature to find the topic or guest you would love to learn more about. Also, don't forget to make someone else's day by sharing our show. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.